Well, it is indeed my pleasure to have facilitated the Educator Excellence Committee, and truly my privilege to work with such outstanding leaders who have put enormous amounts of time, as all of you have, into this work. So thank you so much for your commitment and your servant leadership. Our co-chairs from the state board are Rebecca Himshoot and John Harmon, and they've been with us every step of the way, and really want to recognize them and thank them also for their participation. And want to thank Sandra Meredith and Bob Williams, who provided support from the Department of Education and Early Development. They've been outstanding, and again, appreciate their support. So from the very beginning, we decided that this work is so critical. We wanted to take even additional focus into the different component pieces of Educator Excellence. So we formed into 3 subcommittees, and those subcommittees were number 1, prepare and pre-service, and that was chaired by Dr. Steve Atwater. And the second committee was in-service, professional learning, and accountability, and that was chaired by Yedibe Evans. Yedibe is unable to be with us today. She did incredible work for us, but had a professional commitment, and so her subcommittee's report will be chaired by our AASSP President-elect Dan Karstens. And our third subcommittee was recruitment and continuous improvement, and that was chaired by Tam Augusti Giesler. Did I get that right? Yay. And 2 things before we move to their reports. It was intentional by this committee that we are focused on educators versus, say, a subgroup of that, say teachers or principals or superintendents, but really we kept an intentional focus on educators. And the second thing is, as you did before, if you wouldn't mind holding any questions until each subcommittee has had an opportunity to give their report. So thanks again to our committee, and we'll start with Dr. Atwater. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to introduce you all. Sorry, let's do that. Jessie Weiler was one of our student or parent reps on the committee, and she was with us all morning and did our practice and our run through, but she had to go and she had some commitments with her children. So appreciated her involvement throughout. And one thing that's interesting about Jessie is that she's a homeschool parent. And she was enormously valuable, I think, to us in her feedback from that vantage point. So we also have Senator Garen Stevens, and wave your hand or stand up, and Representative Justin Parrish. And again, thank them and their staff for actively participating throughout. That's been very helpful. And Tam Augusti Giesler, school board member from Anchorage. You'll be hearing from her. Dr. Steve Atwater, the Dean of the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. Posey Boggs. Where's Posey? Posey, I want to say her advocacy for reading is invaluable, and literacy. So thank you for your voice. Cheryl Weinberg, who's Executive Director of CERC. And also Jerry is here, and thank you also. He's been able to participate with us. We appreciate that. And Dan Karstens, Principal in the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. Wave your hand, wave your hand. John Cedar, attorney here with Cedar, Wentland, Evans, and Filippi. I think most of you know he represents the far majority of school districts in Alaska. Again, a really interesting viewpoint. And Betty Walters, who at some point or another has been involved with almost everything in Alaska. So where is Betty? And we're so grateful for her historical perspective on many issues. So we just had an outstanding committee, and I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Atwater. Do you want to tell me when?
Yeah, just go to the first goal.
Oh, wait. Oh.
Right there? Okay, you can't see what's happening. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Lisa said, my name's Steve Atwater, and she volunteered me to be the chair of the subcommittee, and so it worked out well. But my world, of course, is preparing teachers or living with the teacher preparation side of things, and so it made sense for me to lead this effort up. With that said, early on when we started to discuss the preparation of teachers or educators, preparation of educators, and what we could do differently, what would be transformational, it was immediately obvious that the university system here is not really the place to look at, and that's because more than half of the educators in Alaska don't come through the state's education university system. They're brought in from outside. And so for us to affect change, we felt that we would not focus on what we can control inside of our university system, rather what we can control prior to the educators going to work. Okay, and so that was the mindset or the context that we operated under. And with that said, we played around and dug back and forth and landed with the idea that there's a unique need in Alaska for various pieces of professional development that may or may not exist in other places. And as such, if we can control or influence that professional development, that training piece, we could have a much greater impact on the educators in our state. And with that in mind, we decided that it was best to move away from the standalone districts responsible for each of those, which is what we currently live in. Each district is now responsible for the preparation or training of their hires to work inside of their schools. And so we said, well, given that, it's probably best if we step back from that and instead collectively address that as a unit. Okay, so that's the transformational change that we're after, is shifting from district being responsible for all the training preparation of their hires once they get them hired, and instead collectively coming together, districts coming together, pooling resources, pooling expertise to address the need that way. So that's the transformational change that we're after. The training piece is already going on. Okay, that'll happen inside of these academies that we're going to be promoting. But the transformation is that it's no longer on the backs of district by district by district by district, but instead pooling that together. And so some of the points I want to make regarding that, the goal is there, and you can begin to see the rationale. I'll just speak to it. You can read through the rationale statements as they come forward. But some of the pieces I want to make sure that are touched on this is that we figured intensive academies to bring people together for this purpose would occur. And they would necessarily be the vehicle to get us to where we're trying to go to. Okay, and they would occur in multiple locations across the state. They would address different needs. Could be for a 10-year veteran teacher who's brand new to the state from Omaha or wherever, and helping that person have success when they land in Norma's district in Chivac. And so that's exactly the type of thing that we're looking for, is to address that need. We also, more importantly, wanted to address the limitations of the small school districts in Alaska, in that new hires are often somewhat isolated as a group. And we felt that if we could establish cohorts of new people to the state, new people to the profession, that would extend the collegiality of the profession beyond what's typically offered in a smaller location, and in turn enhance the experience of being an educator and lead to a much greater sense of ownership in the profession, which in turn would lead to greater retention and that type of thing. So the second point that we want to make is that the academies that we're offering would have a cohort approach to them. We'd bring cohorts of people together, educators together, and they in turn would function or would meet beyond this initial academy. These academies are not designed to be quick drive-by events. We're very much determined that the academy should be an intensive 3, 4, 5-week experience where people are getting a really deep dive into what it is that they're being trained or looking at. And so that is different from a lot of what happens. A lot of times we have school districts frantically spending 2 or 3 days trying to get their new hires up to speed. And it's really, as we all know, not enough. And so this is more of a collective effort and more of a deeper dive. And then finally, we want to address various needs across the spectrum with what educators would need. This could be, as Lisa mentioned, something regarding literacy. It could be something simply regarding to how to really work with children who are of a different culture. And while much of this is much of the initial thought was designed for rural Alaska, we recognize immediately that this is a statewide issue. The need to address cultural needs across our state, right here, of course, in our biggest city, we have enormous cultural needs. And so the cross-cultural teaching challenges that face many of our educators would be addressed through these academies as well. And so those are the big pieces of what we're after. The transformational idea is to remove the responsibility from the district to more collectively collaborate to address those needs in terms of helping the educators that are newly hired for the district, could be new to the profession, could also be new to the state, to get up to speed to have success in our schools. And I'll stop there.
introduce yourself.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Karstens. I'm a principal down on the Kenai. Also serve as the president-elect, soon to be president here in a couple of weeks of our Alaska Association of Secondary School Principals. And just like all of you, after many hours of meeting through the spring, summer, and fall, we did come down with a transformational goal for our in-service professional learning and accountability subcommittee. Our professional and transformational goal is to grow education leadership through an educator leadership grant program. And so I wanted to focus on some of the ideas as to why this is transformational. First off, it's a competitive grant. Not everyone gets it. You must want to get this thing. And so it's not just on top of any sort of funding formula, funding program, or anything like that. It's something that teachers or other educators want to have. Another reason it is just the nature of the grant is it's to share those best practices, to be able to share those leadership experiences and abilities that you learn while you get this grant. And it really gets some of our educators to come, I guess, for lack of a better word, come out of those caves and to really share their experiences with everybody around. And one of the strongest reasons I think is that this really personalizes learning for our educators. I know that there's a lot of districts right now and a lot of our state that has a focus on personalizing learning for students. And if we're going to personalize learning for students, why wouldn't we do this for our educators as well? One other thing that I did want to mention is our National Association of Secondary School Principals. One of their strategic goals this year was to create a competitive grant for school leader recruitment and support. So one of these goals that we have in our committee goes right in line with national associations as well. And we have our rationale up there, but I did want to kind of touch on some of the ideas that we were brainstorming as we were meeting these past few months, and really. Some of the things that you can do with this grant are very powerful. It gives our educators opportunities outside of the classroom. It gives them that next step. We all know that our educators grow at different capacities, and whatever they can get from this grant or whatever they can do with this grant, it's really going to prepare them for the next level. It's not necessarily we're preparing teachers to be administrators, because there's so many different pathways that we have in our educational environment. There's so many different ways that we can go, and really these grants are predetermined by that local level. What does the local level need out of their educators? We also talked about continuing education units focused on our culture, being culturally responsive. We all know that Alaska has a diverse population with very unique needs. And really through this, we can have our educators really understand the culture a little bit better. We all know that culture is not static, and we can provide these in order for people to attend things like AFN or World Eskimo Indian Olympics or other locally identified activities that districts support. And also, another idea is providing educators the opportunity for micro-credentialing. Again, it really personalizes the professional learning. And a lot of the professional learning that many educators go through goes unrecognized. They'll go on a summertime institute or something, and it doesn't really, it may not give them a whole lot to come back and use with everybody else, maybe just their one specific classroom. But through the use of a grant, you're ended up sharing these leadership opportunities with everyone around you. With that, I will stop and pause.
So I'm Tam Agasti-Giesler, not to be confused with some other person running around this community they call Tam Agnostic Geezer. So Agasti-Giesler it is, and our goal has to do with increasing the number of nationally board-certified teachers in the state, and specifically increasing the number of NBCTs in hard-to-staff schools and districts, both through the provision of salary incentives. Now, before I begin to tell you why this is transformational, I want to make sure that people understand there's research that backs up the statement that teacher quality is directly related to student achievement and that competitive salaries attract better teachers. So that's quoted in our rationale if you want to look up the research. I also want to make sure that everyone in the room understands what National Board Certification is. This is a rigorous process through the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards that requires teachers to analyze and reflect on their practice and demonstrate through standards-based evidence their effectiveness in impacting student learning, content knowledge, assessment, and engagement with their colleagues and families. So National Board Certification is basically the highest standard for the profession. We talked earlier about not settling for best when we think we can get better, and this is an opportunity for teachers who are good teachers, who are experienced teachers, to become even more experienced and more qualified in their craft of teaching. So by attaining National Board Certification, a teacher moves beyond their basic licensure to a higher degree of practice. Why is this transformational? Well, right now in Alaska, there are districts who offer incentives to attract and retain educators, who offer incentives to bring teachers who are nationally board certified into their district. I know in the Anchorage School District, we offer a $2,000 salary increase if you have national board certification. However, there are many districts that have a hard time attracting and retaining teachers in hard-to-fill positions, not just in our rural areas, right here in Anchorage too. So our transformational idea is if we achieve this National Board Certified Teaching goal, we would move all districts in Alaska from a single district negotiated incentive based on need to a standard practice in all districts based on both need and teacher quality. So we would fill need and we would raise the ship for everybody at the same time. Now going back to what is the current status, because I have some statistics or some data to back up why this would be a great idea. We don't have to invent the wheel. Washington State has done this, and so I want to fill you in on some of that. There are currently in Alaska 175 teachers who've earned national board certification, and we have 34 candidates for that. Washington State experienced great success with their incentive program, which includes salary incentives and doubles the salary incentive for nationally board certified teachers who teach in hard-to-staff schools. There were 29 teachers in the state of Washington who were board certified prior to the inclusion of salary incentives in their state statutes in 1999-2000. The number of NBCTs prior to implementation of a $3,500 annual bonus in 2000-2001 was 73. There are now 8,584 board certified teachers, as well as 3,809 candidates in Washington State. For perspective, in 2000, we had 7 NBCTs in Alaska. That was only 22 less than Washington had prior to this salary increase. After 17 years, nationally board certified teachers in Alaska, we have 175, as I said. That's 8,409 less than Washington in that same period of time. And prior to the addition of national board bonuses for teaching in high-need schools, about 9% of Washington teachers in these schools were board certified. Today, 35% of those teachers in high-need schools are. So there's proof in the pudding, there's proof in the numbers. In Alaska, too, we have already support systems through NEA and the Alaska National Teacher Board Network to support these candidates in completing the rigorous process. and one that provides a substantial growth opportunity for participants. I want to end with a quick quote from a teacher here in the Anchorage School District about her National Board Certification status. She says, quote, "The analysis and reflection that is embedded in the MBC process had a profound impact on my teaching. I've heard that the same from each person I know who's participated in the process, whether he or she achieved the certification or not. I believe that incentives will help teachers access National Board Certification as meaningful professional development, and student learning will increase as a result. NBC raises the level of professionalism and confidence as it guides teachers to realize strengths, identify focus areas, and set relevant goals." Thank you.
Wait, we'll go back. Go through. Okay, thank you. And at this time, I think we have some time for questions, if anyone has any. And I invite our committee to actually stand up, because I know you can't see them from out there. They don't want to, but I'd still ask them to stand up so they can see you. Yeah. Stand up. This is an active working committee. Yeah, let's give them a hand. Commissioner, do you mind if I do the same exercise, just ask each of them to make a quick comment? And I'd need a microphone. Let's start on the end with Representative Parrish, please.
Well, yeah, live and learn. So it was a great privilege to work with the other members of the committee on this and to work with all of you on the larger goal. I hope that as we're going forward, when there are items which will ultimately carry fiscal notes, you make sure to insist that the legislature allocate the money rather than passing the cost off to the districts. And I think that a lot of the proposals could be a very good value for the money.
Thanks for committing the legislature to more money. I appreciate that. We'll see how that works out. But anyway, I particularly appreciated the issue of the academies. I think that is a major step forward. Some of our districts do a good job, others do a not particularly good job. This would allow us to even it out, and every district could have a better program because of that. Thank you.
In relationship to the academies, the other thing that I wanted to say is that the districts would be working together, but also the various professional organizations. And I think that that's also very transformational, that we'd bring all players to the table to plan and execute very meaningful professional learning opportunities that would impact people new to the state, new to the profession, and also extend the learning opportunities over time in a very collegial way that will, I think, really impact people staying in the profession and elevating their craft.
First, I want to thank everybody on this committee. I've learned an awful lot about how Alaska education goes here and how to transform it. I think with the academies, what I can see a future where they're created, they're really tight, they're wonderful, measurable outcomes. We can sell it to the rest of the United States for a profit. Senator Stevens.
Yeah, I already talked a lot, but I'll add a couple more cents here. But one of the big things I do appreciate about this is one of the things about growing our own leaders within our schools, within our districts, within our state, is that it does take some of that responsibility off of a principal's plate. A lot of times we have, I mean, in my own school, I have 31 teachers that I'm in charge of developing, personalizing their learning as well. And when I have them working together, and if they've developed it themselves, it's going to be a lot more impactful when they own it.
Yeah, this is a great process. I know that our conversations got more and more candid, more and more honest as we went on. We were dropping our guards all the time, so that was really good. I think we've heard that mentioned. At the start of the meeting, it was mentioned about the respect for local control, local autonomy. But we also recognize the need to, when possible, work together. And so I think the mindset that you have to go it alone, that 54 districts do it by themselves, is probably a mistake. And so the more that we can collectively work together, the better. So that's one of my takeaways.
Even standing up, many of you can't see me, Dan, the vertically challenged. I think we had some very candid discussions, and I think that there, like with many of your groups, I'm sure there are a lot of good ideas left on the cutting room floor. And so I think this process has been really good. And I think that I'll speak to the National Board Certification dollars. It's neat for me, representing school districts and representing school districts at the collective bargaining table, to see a connection between a dollar spent and getting stuff and getting something measurable back. And I think that's a process or an idea or an approach that's got great value. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add, in our subcommittee's process, there were some great ideas. In fact, one that I put forward that we had to put in the parking lot. Yet I pride myself in my school board work and on the work in this committee of embracing those things that have the data that back it up. And that's why I was able to let go of mine. Actually, we just made a decision that we're going to take those directly to the legislature anyway and push those along. They don't have to be put in a parking lot too long. So, so I'm asking for people to really look at those things where there's some data that backs up what we're trying to do.
How much time do I have? No. We focused on educator excellence, and the important piece is throughout all of our discussions, we were not only talking about teachers, we were talking about administrators, to include principals and assistant principals, and importantly, the paraprofessionals and the tutors who work with our kids every day.
And I was noticing in the first group that there are already intersections between what our committee's looking at and some of what they were talking about doing as far as student learning. So to me, the two are very much hand in hand.
Okay, I'm getting the high sign. We have a couple minutes left. Are there any questions? You can see what an outstanding committee they are. Any questions from anyone? Okay, well, thank you again. Thank you again.